In this vlog, we will discuss some scenario-based interview questions related to network security that may be asked in an interview. Moving forward to scenario. An employee receives a suspicious email with a link to a phishing website. How would you handle this situation to prevent a security breach? I would advise the employee not to click on the link and report the email to the IT security team immediately. I'll also instruct them to refrain from providing any personal or sensitive information. I would analyze the email header to identify the source and potential indicators of phishing. Then I would block the malicious website using different web filtering tools and update email security filters to prevent similar emails from reaching other users. Finally, it's important to conduct security awareness training for employees to educate them about the risk of phishing attacks and the best practices for email security in future. A security vulnerability is identified in a critical network device. How would you prioritize and remediate this vulnerability to minimize the risk to the organization? First, I would assess the severity of the vulnerability based on its impact on the network, exploitability, and available patches or mitigations. Then I would prioritize remediation based on the criticality of the affected device, its exposure to internet, and its role in supporting business critical operations. If a patch is available, I would schedule downtime for applying the patch and conduct thorough testing to ensure compatibility and stability. In case patching is not feasible, I would implement compensating controls like firewall rules, intrusion prevention system, or network segmentation to mitigate the risk until a patch can be applied. DDoS attack is targeting the company's network infrastructure. How would you respond to mitigate the impact of the attack and restore normal network operations? I would first activate DDoS mitigation measures like rate limiting, traffic filtering, and black holing to block malicious traffic and potential critical network resources. Then I'll also notify the ISP to request assistance in mitigating the attack upstream. Additionally, I would monitor the network traffic and performance metrics to identify patterns and anomalies indicative of the attack. I would communicate with the key stakeholders, including management, IT teams, and external partners, to coordinate response efforts and provide regular updates on the status of the attack and mitigation measures. Once the attack subsides, I would conduct a post-mortem analysis to identify the lessons learned and strengthen the network defenses against future attacks. A network intrusion is detected and sensitive data may have been compromised. How would you contain the breach and initiate incident response procedures? I would immediately isolate the affected systems from the network to prevent further unauthorized access and data exfiltration. I would activate incident response protocols like gather evidence, analyze the scope of the intrusion, and identify the root cause of the breach. Then I would notify the relevant stakeholders, including management, legal counsel, and regulatory authorities as required by data breach notification laws. I would engage a forensic expert to conduct a thorough investigation and assess the extent of the damage. Depending on the severity of the breach, I would implement remediation measures like patching vulnerabilities, updating security controls, and enhancing monitoring and detection capabilities to prevent future incidents. A security audit reveals weak authentication practices across the network infrastructure. How would you strengthen authentication mechanisms to improve overall network security? I would implement MFA for all access points, including VPNs, remote desktop services, and administrative consoles. Multi-factor authentication adds an extra layer of security by requiring users to provide additional authentication factors. I would also enforce strong password policies like minimum length requirements, complexity rules, and regular password expiration. I would review and update access control lists and user permissions to ensure least privilege access and limit exposure to sensitive resources. A zero-day vulnerability is discovered in a critical network application. How would you mitigate the risk posed by this vulnerability until a patch becomes available? I would implement temporary mitigations to reduce the risk of exploitation, like disabling the vulnerable features or services, restricting access to affected systems, deploying virtual patches or workarounds provided by the vendor or security researchers. I would closely monitor threat intelligence sources for updates on the vulnerability and prioritize applying the patch as soon as it becomes available. In the meantime, I would enhance intrusion detection and prevention capabilities to detect and block attempts to exploit the vulnerability and conduct regular vulnerability scans to identify and remediate other potential weakness in the network. A mobile device containing sensitive company data is lost or stolen. How would you protect the data and prevent unauthorized access? I would remotely wipe the device to erase all sensitive data stored on it and prevent unauthorized access. In case remote wipe is not visible, I would disable the access to corporate resources and revoke any associated credentials or access tokens. I'll also notify the user and IT security team about the incident and initiate procedures for reporting the loss or theft to relevant authorities such as law enforcement agencies or regulatory bodies. I would review and update mobile device management policies and security controls to prevent similar incidents in the future. A company merger or acquisition is underway and network integration is required. How would you ensure a seamless and secure transition while preserving data integrity and confidentiality? I would conduct a thorough assessment of both networks to identify compatibility issues, overlapping IP address ranges, and any security gaps. I would develop a detailed migration plan that includes the steps for network segmentation, VLAN reconfiguration, firewall rule optimization, and data migration. I would coordinate with stakeholders from both the organizations to ensure alignment on objectives and timelines. Throughout the integration, I would prioritize security by implementing encryption, access controls, and monitoring mechanisms to protect sensitive data and prevent unauthorized access or data leakage. A company's web server is targeted by a SQL injection attack leading to unauthorized access to the database. How would you mitigate the impact of the attack and prevent future incidents? I would immediately disconnect the affected server from the network to prevent further exploitation and initiate incident response procedures to contain the breach. I would restore the server from a known good backup to ensure data integrity and investigate the root cause of the vulnerability, like insecure code or misconfigured database permissions. I would patch or update the affected applications or systems to remediate the vulnerability and implement additional security measures like input validation, parameterized queries, and web application firewalls to prevent similar attacks in the future. A company's network is targeted by a sophisticated, advanced, persistent threat actor. How would you detect and respond to this persistent and stealthy threat? I would implement advanced threat detection and response capabilities such as threat hunting, endpoint detection and response, network traffic analysis, and security information and event management systems to identify and analyze anomalous behavior indicative of an APT attack. I would deploy deception technologies, honeypots, and decoy system to lure and deceive attackers and gather intelligence on their tactics, techniques, and procedures. I would also collaborate with internal and external threat intelligence sources to gather actionable threat intelligence and indicators of compromise to enhance detection and response capabilities. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to stay updated.